At Hotfire Immortal Venerable's words, Han Li and the others immediately turned to look at what he held in his hand. The truth pearl was now flickering with a soft radiance, and the golden inscriptions engraved across its surface were also shining with waves of golden light. A teleportation array? Husan asked delightedly as he brought the flying boat to a halt. Hotfire Immortal Venerable glanced at him and nodded. Fellow Taoist, sure, this part depends on you now, Han Li said, looking toward Shi Chuankong. Shi Chuankong said nothing. He merely closed his eyes slowly and brought his hands together before him. With a silent incantation, a brilliant patch of silver light bloomed from his palms, while ripples of spatial fluctuation spread from his body. A moment later he suddenly opened his eyes. His hands flew apart, palms raised to the heavens in a gesture as though opening the gate of heaven itself. The dazzling silver light in his hands instantly swelled, transforming into a pale silver curtain of light that expanded outward in all directions. As the pale silver screen spread, the lotus leaves all around them and the shimmering water light dissolved like morning mist. The drifting illusion smoke was pushed away layer by layer, rolling outward. Only after the silver light had stretched to a range of more than 1,000 zhang did it finally stop. Within that 1,000 zhang radius, the true appearance of the space at last emerged. A swamp in its original form. Purple light blazed in Han Li's eyes. He swept his gaze over the area and immediately spotted, 1,000 zhang straight ahead, an abrupt heap of white rubble standing on a muddy shoal thick with aquatic grass. Over there. Following Han Li's direction, Husan at once drove the spirit boat forward and brought them to the pile of stones. The heap on the mudflat was only a few zhang wide and looked like the remains of a stone pillar that had once been shattered. Hotfire Immortal Venerable stepped forward, examined it, and let out a sigh. This is one of the inscribed stone pillars from a teleportation array. The entire formation has long since been ruined beyond recognition. It's useless now. No matter. The ruins of the True Words Gate were never going to be easy to find, Husan said, unbothered. Han Li and the others nodded and continued onward into the depths of the mist. In the blink of an eye, more than a month had passed. Han Li and the others drifted through the dust-laden fogs of illusory smoke marsh, searching everywhere. Though they occasionally found traces of ruins, most were little more than broken walls, collapsed tiles, shattered gates, and ruined pillars. They did encounter a few teleportation arrays with great difficulty, but every one of them was too badly damaged to be of any use. Fellow Taoist Li, we've already moved far away from the Youfu Island region. Should we consider changing direction and searching elsewhere? Husan asked as he guided the silver flying boat slowly onward. Han Li considered for a moment, then nodded. We can try heading toward Illusory Smoke City. Just then, Hotfire Immortal Venerable suddenly said, Don't be in such a hurry, everyone. There's another teleportation array nearby. All right. We may as well take a look, Husan said expressionlessly. By now, not only Husan but also Han Li and Shi Chuankong had lost the eager excitement they had once felt at the mention of a teleportation array. None of them expected much anymore. Yet when Shi Chuankong broke through the misty obstruction, the sight before them still left them stunned. 1,000 zhang away on a stretch of white sandbar, stood 7 or 8 enormous white stone pillars. Intricate runes were carved across them, though not the slightest fluctuation of spiritual power came from them. The group immediately urged the boat forward and landed on the sandbar, where they could finally take in the full appearance of the array. It was encircled by 11 white stone pillars. Only 7 remained completely upright. Another stood half broken, while the rest had already collapsed entirely. After examining it for a short while, Hotfire Immortal Venerable frowned deeply and said, This is one of the 8 teleportation arrays outside the mountain gate. The damage is too severe. It can't be used. Han Li seemed not to hear him. He walked around the pillars for a while, then crouched to inspect the formation patterns at the center of the array. A thoughtful look came over his face. Fellow Taoist, sure, do you have any items on you that contain the power of spatial laws? He asked at last. Fellow Taoist Li, are you saying you want to replace the pillars with spatial objects and repair the formation that way? Forgive my bluntness, but that won't work, Shi Chuankong replied after a slight hesitation. Whether it works or not, we should try first, Han Li said with a grin. Brother Shi, don't you have that pair of stone lions? Stop being stingy and bring them out. If they break, I'll compensate you, Husan said with a laugh, throwing an arm around his shoulder. Ignoring Husan, Shi Chuankong looked at Han Li and asked skeptically, "You really can repair it? 3 chances in 10. Care to gamble?" Han Li replied, holding up 3 fingers. "My luck at gambling hasn't been good lately. I'm afraid I'll lose again this time," Shi Chuankong said helplessly after a brief pause. With a turn of his hand, a pair of gray-white stone lions about 3 chi tall appeared and landed on the ground. Han Li laughed and swept out his hand. Wrapped in a strand of azure light, the stone lions drifted over and settled onto the teleportation array. Then he flipped his wrist and produced formation plates and flags one after another, beginning to arrange them across the ground. Several hours later, "It's done," Han Li said, straightening up after placing the final formation plate. "That's it, finished already?" Husan asked, still doubtful. "The spatial objects are standing in for the stone pillars. The spatial power inside them should be enough to support the operation of the whole formation. But the other plates and flags won't be nearly as durable. I estimate they'll only last for a short time before being destroyed," Han Li explained. "Only a short time. Will that be enough to teleport us through?" Hotfire Immortal Venerable asked uncertainly. "Fortunately, this array was originally designed to transport several hundred people at once. Sending just the 4 of us through won't be a problem. Everything is ready now. We're only waiting on one last thing." Han Li clapped his hands and looked at Husan. "What else do we need?" Husan asked, puzzled. "Immortal Origin Stones. Judging by the look of it, they'll have to be at least middle grade." Han Li pointed at several recessed grooves in the ground and smiled. Fellow Taoistly, they're only a few Immortal Origin Stones. Couldn't you have set them in while arranging everything else?" Husan said helplessly. "A lone cultivator like me doesn't save up much family fortune easily. Middle-grade Immortal Origin Stones especially aren't like the low-grade ones. I don't have many on me to begin with," Han Li said with a smile. At that, Husan and Shi Chuankong exchanged a glance and laughed at the same time. They had never truly believed Han Li was an unaffiliated rogue cultivator with no backing, especially after seeing the many methods he possessed. But now, seeing how miserly he was being, they actually found themselves half convinced. Once the 4 of them stood in the center of the formation, Husan took out several middle-grade Immortal Origin Stones and set them into the array one by one. Han Li immediately formed a spell seal. The entire formation flared with brilliant light and swallowed the 4 figures whole. After they disappeared, the light from the array quickly dimmed again. The pair of stone lions remained completely intact, and even most of the formation plates and flags had somehow survived. A short while later, Han Li and the others appeared before a gigantic mountain gate. The majestic gate, along with a vast plaza of white stone, floated suspended in the void. Clouds and mist surrounded it on all sides. It seemed to be separated from the outside by a layer of spatial barrier that even divine sense could not penetrate. Several sky-reaching stone pillars stood before the gate, so tall that their tops vanished into the dense clouds above. Outside the entrance, a thick white curtain of light covered the area, clearly some powerful restriction. Hotfire Immortal Venerable stood before the gate and looked up. Crystalline light welled in his eyes as he fell into reverie. A thunderous boom startled him from his memories. When he turned his head, he found Shi Chuankong attacking the white light barrier. Yet no matter what methods Shi Chuankong used, the light screen merely shuddered violently without showing the slightest sign of breaking. "I'll try." As Husan spoke, his figure blurred, and his body suddenly swelled 100-fold. Raising one hand into a claw, he raked it viciously across the white light curtain. 5 enormous claw marks, each over 100 zhang long, appeared out of nowhere and tore into the barrier. Crackling light burst from the white curtain in a dazzling spray of 5-colored lightning, shaking the surrounding void until it roared. But when the lightning faded, the white curtain remained exactly as before, unchanged in the slightest. "Don't waste your strength. This restriction contains the power of spatial laws, and it seems mixed with the power of time laws as well. Ordinary methods can't break it," Shi Chuankong said. Han Li had not yet acted, but from the movements of their attacks he had already reached the same conclusion. Hearing this, Husan immediately shrank back to his original size and asked, That's strange. Since you can see what's going on, do you have a way to break it? As for the spatial power, I can set up a formation to weaken it within the restriction. After that, if all of us attack together, we may be able to shatter it, Shi Chuankong said after a moment of thought. No time to waste. Start setting it up at once, Husan said, already eager for action. At the same time, at the edge of Illusory Smoke Marsh several hundred li outside Illusory Smoke City, a man stood facing the swamp with his hands clasped behind his back. He was extraordinarily tall and broad, built like an iron tower, with a mane of blazing red hair tied high. He cut a commanding figure. His face was sharply contoured, bearing some resemblance to that of a human, though only by half. His nose was dark blue-black and coarse, like the horn of a rhinoceros, and his ears were long and pointed, each hanging with a huge golden ring. At that moment he stared into the boundless haze over the swamp, his expression cold and severe, with anger faintly visible beneath it. Just then, a streak of emerald light shot in from the distant horizon. While it was still several hundred li away, it was caught within a fire-red spirit domain, wrapped in a mass of scarlet flames, and brought instantly before the alien man. With a deafening boom, the emerald light came crashing down. A jade-green flying carriage flashed into view and slammed heavily onto the ground. 3 people leaped down from it at once. A burly red-haired man, a bamboo-thin figure, and a handsome young man dressed in red. Looking somewhat embarrassed, they bowed to the alien man and said, "Greetings, Lord Qi Rong." These 3 were none other than Gongshu Tian, his senior brother Wang Shaoxin, and his personal disciple Feng Qingyan. "You are a full half-month later than the time I gave you," the alien man called Qi Rong said coldly. Reporting to Lord Qi Rong. Silver Fox was sighted in the Black Mountain Immortal region. We were delayed while trying to capture him, and senior brother Wang was even injured, Gongshu Tian said, remaining bent in salute. "Oh? Was he captured?" Qi Rong asked, arching a brow. "This? Silver Fox received help from a devil race cultivator, and he escaped." Before Gongshu Tian could finish, Qi Rong cut him off with a single word. "Useless." All 3 men's expressions shifted slightly. Deep in their eyes flashed a trace of anger, but it vanished almost at once. Forget it. Too much time has already been lost, and the true words Gate Ruins will only appear for a limited period. Don't delay the real matter any longer. Once this business is settled, I'll deal with you then. We leave immediately, Qi Rong said, casting the 3 of them a cold glance. Yes. The 3 men secretly let out sighs of relief and answered together. With a sweep of Qi Rong's sleeve, vast waves of rolling flame surged out, twisting and weaving before him. In the blink of an eye they transformed into an enormous spirit boat shaped like a fire dragon. Carrying the 4 of them, it became a streak of red light and shot straight into the dust-laden illusion smoke, vanishing from sight. Less than the time it took a stick of incense to burn after they had departed, several streaks of light flew in rapidly from the direction of Illusory Smoke City. After a few flashes, they landed at the edge of the swamp. When the lights faded, 4 figures appeared. 3 men and 1 woman. The man in the lead looked middle-aged. He was unusually tall, nearly half again the height of an ordinary person, with bronze-colored skin and sharply defined features. He wore a suit of golden armor and a cloak patterned in purple and gold flowers, looking every bit the imposing warrior. He was none other than Su Lu, the one stationed in Jukuan City. A few river-crossing dragons think they can stir up trouble on our turf, Su Lu said disdainfully, displeasure flashing across his face. Come to think of it, though they belong to the heavenly court like us, we've always minded our own waters. They didn't even bother to notify us this time, which truly is rather excessive. Still, Brother Su, why trouble yourself over it? With the 4 Alliance Immortal Regions joining forces this time, how could we possibly let that treasure fall into someone else's hands? Said the man behind him, a scholar in white robes who idly fanned himself with a folding fan. What fellow Taoist Zhaozhan says is true. Illusory Smoke Marsh is our territory. As the saying goes, even a mighty dragon cannot suppress the local snake. No matter how wildly they thrash, they won't be able to raise much of a wave, said a seductive woman in a violet palace gown, with a red beauty mark between her brows. This woman was the current city lord of Illusory Smoke City, and also the Tao companion of the master of Black Earth Immortal Palace. Though her cultivation was not especially high, only late golden immortal, her status within the Four Alliance immortal regions was far from low. And the Zhao Zhen she mentioned was the scholar-robed man, the supervisory immortal envoy stationed in Ziyuan City of the Fuse Immortal region. There was also one more person, a short, somewhat hunched bald old man who stood with his hands behind his back, staring at the swamp without joining the discussion. Senior Lu, before this, all of us tried separately to enter the True Words Gate ruins, and every attempt ended in failure. Now that we've resolved to work together, we should be honest with one another. Are you truly confident you can locate the spatial node? Zhao Zhen asked, snapping his fan shut as he looked toward the bent old man. This old man was none other than Lu Wuliang, the current master of Yuanjing Immortal Palace. Rest assured, if I weren't completely certain, I would never have spoken of it to you. As for how to break the spatial node afterward, you all know what to do. When the time comes, just don't hold back your strength, the old man said in a hoarse voice. With Palace Master Lu's words, this humble one is much more at ease, the seductive woman said with a laugh, covering her mouth. Enough talking. Let's go, Sulu said suddenly after glancing at the old man. As soon as he finished speaking, 5-colored lightning burst around him and his body shot upward from the ground. In a single flash he disappeared into illusory smoke marsh. The other three exchanged a glance, then their escape lights blazed as they followed after him. At the same time, far away, a million li distant, above another stretch of swamp where thick illusion smoke coiled endlessly, an enormous stone staircase with hundreds of levels floated in the void. Several men and women in blue cloaks were slowly ascending it. At the front was a tall, graceful woman. Her skin was pale blue, her green hair curled, and she wore a coat of fine scale armor. Her every step was supple and alluring, swaying with serpentine charm. She looked like a boneless enchantress of a snake, impossible to look away from. Behind her followed a giant of a man, massive as an iron tower, with a broad sword as wide as a door strapped to his back, and an emaciated old man whose face was waxy yellow and whose dry lips made him look like a consumptive ghost. The burly man kept his eyes fixed ahead, his expression grave, as though he were somewhat nervous. The sickly-looking old man, on the other hand, seemed far more relaxed, his cloudy eyes roaming brazenly over the blue-skinned woman's body. Suddenly, the blue-skinned woman stopped and turned around. Her flawless face was full of cold indifference, but in her long narrow eyes were a pair of golden vertical pupils. The gaze that fell from them onto the sickly old ghost was steeped in murderous intent. Put away your dog eyes. Don't force me to kill you before the mission even begins, the blue-skinned woman said coldly. The old ghost instantly felt as though a bucket of ice water had been poured over his head. He froze on the spot. It was not her words that frightened him most, but the strange gleam that had erupted in those vertical pupils as she spoke, a light that seemed to seize the soul. Why is fairy by she? I wouldn't dare, the old ghost stammered. Fairy by she, in our Ipao society, don't we usually carry out missions in pairs? Why are the three of us traveling together this time? The burly man asked. At his question, the expression on the blue-skinned woman's face abruptly softened, and she smiled with seductive grace. If we didn't need that old lecher's skill in setting up spatial formations, then this mission would still just be me taking you along. Fairy, you jest? The burly man said stiffly, growing even more nervous. Seeing his reaction, the blue-skinned woman seemed to find it amusing, and the smile on her face became even more enchanting. The sickly old ghost watched them and gave a bitter look, sighing inwardly without end. At the mountain gate of the True Words Gate ruins, Han Li and the others were moving quickly over the ground before the gate. Off to one side lay a small pile of silver crystals, along with formation flags and plates. Shi Chuankong was currently inscribing a silver formation over 10 zhang wide into the ground. As he worked, he directed Han Li and the others in placing the silver crystals, formation flags, and plates into position. With all four of them working together, progress came swiftly. Before long, a dazzling and intricate silver formation had been completed. Step back a little, Shi Chuankong said as he walked into the formation. The three others did so. Shi Chuankong nodded, then rapidly formed hand seals and pointed downward. With a rushing sound, the spirit patterns across the silver formation lit up ring by ring. The entire array began to hum and operate, spilling out waves of brilliant silver radiance. Countless threads of heaven and earth spiritual energy rushed madly toward it. The silver light it emitted quickly became blinding, then whirled and twisted into a bank of silver mist dozens of zhang across. Innumerable silver runes rolled and surged within the cloud, and powerful spatial fluctuations spread from it. Shi Chuankong's body rose into the air, suspended above the silver mist, his whole form wrapped in a dazzling cloak of silver light. With spirit light flickering around him, he looked almost like a deity. He chanted under his breath, and a silver token suddenly appeared between his fingers. The token was wreathed in dim silver light. One side bore the image of a silver moon, while the other was engraved with the ancient character for space. Waves of spatial law fluctuation radiated from it. Shi Chuankong tossed the token downward into the silver mist, then formed another seal with one hand while continuing to chant. The silver mist immediately began to churn violently, then poured into the token like a tide. The silver token instantly expanded to several zhang in size and blazed with brilliant light. The silver moon and the ancient character upon it became especially radiant, and the spatial law fluctuations it emitted more than doubled in strength. Han Li and the others watching from nearby all showed surprise. None of them remained idle. Each began circulating immortal spiritual power within, gathering strength and waiting. Still chanting, Shi Chuankong spread his fingers and pointed at the token. 5 streams of silver light flew from his fingertips and vanished into it. The token spun rapidly, and with a shrill cry, a silver crescent moon several zhang across shot out from it, whirling as it slashed against the white light curtain. There was no earth-shaking explosion as expected. The instant the silver crescent touched the white curtain, it simply melted directly into it. A muffled, explosive thud rang out from within the white light curtain. The whole barrier shuddered violently, and at the same time a layer of silver crystalline light appeared across its surface, carrying a powerful spatial fluctuation. The silver crystalline light flickered intensely for a moment, then soon steadied again. Seeing this, Han Li's eyes flickered. This layer of silver crystal seemed to be the spatial restriction within the white barrier itself. Shi Chuankong's attack was clearly having an effect. A trace of joy flashed across Shi Chuankong's face as well. He barked out a low cry and formed seals rapidly with both hands. The silver token shone brightly. Whistling cries rang out one after another as crescent after crescent flew from it and struck the silver crystalline light. A string of deep muffled booms followed. The silver crystal flickered violently and dimmed rapidly. Yet wielding the silver token seemed to consume an enormous amount of power. Shi Chuankong's face quickly turned pale. Fortunately, the silver formation continuously poured forth silver mist into the token, helping sustain the spell. After this frenzied assault continued for a while, the silver crystalline light finally tore apart and shattered. With a loud boom, it dissolved into countless motes of spirit light. The white curtain of light shook violently and had clearly thinned by nearly half. Now, I've only temporarily broken the spatial restriction. It'll recover very soon. Shi Chuankong shouted suddenly. Han Li and the other two had long been poised and ready. The moment they heard him, they acted. Hot Fire Immortal Venerable was the first to move. His hands came together and parted, and a golden ancient mirror appeared before him. The same immortal artifact with time law power that had once protected him in battle. He chanted rapidly while rubbing his hands together. 2 streams of golden light shot out and vanished into the mirror. The golden mirror spun, swelling in the wind until it was as large as a house. Light flowed over its surface, and from it surged a great tide of golden radiance that condensed into a gigantic golden rune more than 10 zhang in size. Golden billowed over the huge rune, and majestic fluctuations of time laws burst forth. Hot Fire Immortal Venerable thrust both palms forward in the air, and the rune shot out, crashing viciously into the white light curtain before disappearing into it in a flash. The white curtain shook violently again. A booming sound came from within, and then a layer of golden crystalline light appeared on its surface, flickering madly. The golden crystal rapidly dimmed amid the violent fluctuations, but in the end it still failed to shatter like the previous layer of silver crystal. Almost at the same moment, Husan began rapidly chanting an incantation. Silver light flashed over his body, and with a sway he split into 5 identical figures. The 5 Husans simultaneously clenched their hands in the air, and a pillar of blood-red light erupted from each palm, savage gleams flashing within it in a heart-shaking way. At once, all 5 opened their mouths and spat out streams of crystalline silver brilliance, which flashed into the bloodlight in their hands. The towering bloodlight immediately shrank, transforming into a crystal-clear blood-colored giant axe 10 zhang long. Strands of crystalline bloodlight coiled around the axe like crackling blood-red lightning, releasing terrifyingly sharp auras. With a rushing sound, the 5 giant axes hacked down at the white light curtain. On the other side, azure light flashed repeatedly before Han Li, and 9 bamboo cloud-swarm swords stood in a row, blazing with piercing sword radiance. He spat out a stream of azure light that merged into the swords. Their brilliance flared, and the 9 swords fused into one, becoming a gigantic azure sword 100 zhang long, wrapped in thick arcs of golden lightning. A towering sword aura exploded from it. The mere aftershock of the aura made ripples spread through the nearby void like water. Having been nourished within the jade-green gourd for so many years, the bamboo cloud-swarm swords had grown much more formidable than before. The azure giant sword flashed and became a vague shadow. In the next instant it appeared before the white light curtain and cleaved down with world-splitting force. Though Shi Chuankong's face was pale, he still drew a deep breath and sent out a black circular wheel immortal artifact. It whirled with a mournful hum as it slashed toward the white light curtain. Boom, boom, boom. A succession of heaven-shaking explosions erupted, and the white light curtain flickered wildly. Under the combined force of so many attacks, the layer of golden crystalline light was finally torn apart. The white curtain rapidly thinned as it flickered, until only a thin layer remained. Yet within that remaining layer, countless white crystalline threads appeared, densely interwoven like an enormous spiderweb. Though thin, that final membrane of light was astonishingly tough, straining and holding firm against the 3 attackers. Worse still, golden and silver crystalline light began to spread inward from the edges of the white barrier. Wherever the twin lights passed, the white curtain swiftly returned to its former thickness. This is bad. No one hold back now, or everything we've done will be wasted. Shi Chuankong shouted. He flipped his hand and produced a thumb-sized pill that gave off a faint violet glow. After the slightest hesitation, he threw it into his mouth. Violet light burst from his body, and his pale complexion rapidly recovered, as though his vitality had been replenished all at once. He recalled the black wheel artifact with a wave, then began chanting. A flash of purple light appeared behind him, condensing into the 3-headed, 6-armed purple Dharma idol from before, each arm holding a vague shadow of a giant weapon. His hands flew through a series of seals, and then he pointed toward the sky overhead. A beam of purple light shot upward and vanished into the void. The next moment, a thunderous crack split the air. The sky above was suddenly filled with violent winds, and a great purple-black hole appeared out of nowhere in the void. Countless streams of purple-black devil chi surged out of it and cascaded downward like a waterfall. Without hesitation, Shi Chuankong formed another seal and guided the devil chi. It condensed into enormous purple-black runes that merged into one of the weapon shadows in the purple Dharma idol's hands. That shadow was a giant bow. As the runes poured into it, it rapidly became distinct, almost solid. Purple scales emerged along the bow, inscribed with lines of violet-black runes. Its 2 ends were shaped like demon dragon heads biting a thick bowstring, and an overwhelming ferocious aura radiated from it. Another arm of the Dharma idol drew the string, and a thick giant arrow materialized out of thin air. Then it shot forth like a falling star and slammed into the white light curtain. At the same time, Husan rapidly chanted again. His 5 figures blurred and fused back into one. As they merged, Husan's body swelled rapidly until he stood dozens of zhang tall, shining with brilliant silver radiance. Within the light, the vague shadow of a gigantic silver fox could be seen throwing back its head in a howl. The 5 blood-colored giant axes also fused together, growing into a single enormous axe 100 zhang long. With hissing sounds, clusters of blood-red flame appeared over its surface. As they burned, it seemed as though half the surrounding void was being corroded away and melting. Husan roared and brought the giant axe down in a streak of blood-red light, chopping at the white curtain. As for Hotfire Immortal Venerable, he put away the golden mirror and began intoning an ancient incantation, his face solemn and grave. Countless crimson flames surged from his body and gathered behind him into a giant figure of fire. It wore a crown of flames and held a scepter of fire. Though its features were indistinct, it emanated boundless majesty, as though it were the sovereign of all flame. Hot Fire Immortal Venerable formed seals rapidly with both hands, then abruptly stopped and pointed at the white light curtain. The flaming figure behind him raised its scepter and pointed into the void. With a piercing shriek, a thin flame burst from the tip of the scepter, tearing through the air before vanishing into the void. In the next instant, space in front of the white curtain rippled, and that thin flame reappeared out of nowhere, stabbing viciously into it. Han Li narrowed his eyes. A flash of jade-green light flickered over his body, and a mass of green radiance flew out, becoming a jade-green gourd. The gourd released dazzling emerald light, and countless tiny runes flashed within it, stirring the surrounding heaven and earth spiritual energy into violent leaps. Han Li urgently formed seals with his hand. The gourd rapidly expanded, the runes upon it blazing all at once. The mouth of the gourd erupted with a soaring beam of green light, while deep booming sounds came from within, as though a volcano on the verge of eruption had been compressed inside it. Go! Han Li slashed 2 fingers through the air. The jade-green gourd shook violently, and the nearby void shuddered with it. A vague blue-gold shadow shot from the mouth of the gourd. One could faintly make out that it was a blade shadow, and it struck the white light curtain. The azure giant sword drew back slightly, sword light and lightning blazing even more brightly across it, before slashing down once again. Rumble! For sons of purple, blood red, scarlet and azure appeared, interwoven with one another. A terrifying aura rose from them, enough to destroy heaven and earth. Among the 4 sons, the purple and azure ones were especially immense. Endless purple and azure runes rolled within them, drawing the surrounding heaven and earth spiritual power into a frenzy as they battered the white light curtain. The barrier shook violently. Cracks spread across it in countless lines, and then with an explosive crash it was finally torn apart. The entire white curtain shattered inch by inch, vanishing completely and turning into a great mass of dense white cloud that churned in the air. Within the cloud, gold and silver lights flashed, and 2 command banners flew out, spinning in circles. Both banners were embroidered with constellations. One was gold, the other silver, and each gave off powerful fluctuations of time laws and spatial laws. Han Li's eyes lit sharply. He raised one arm and pointed at the jade-green gourd. Green light flashed from the gourd, and a stream of emerald radiance burst out, crossing dozens of zhang in an instant and wrapping around the golden banner. Almost at the same moment, a giant purple hand shot over and seized the silver banner. It was one of the hands of the purple Dharma idol behind Shi Chuankong. Han Li inwardly muttered in regret, but he swiftly formed a seal. Wrapped in green radiance, the golden banner shot back and vanished into the jade-green gourd. The purple hand, clutching the silver banner, also flew back. Han Li and Shi Chuankong had moved with extraordinary speed in snatching up the treasures. By the time Husan and Hot Fire Immortal Venerable reacted, both banners had already fallen into their hands. Husan and Hot Fire Immortal Venerable exchanged a glance, and both showed a trace of regret. With their experience, they could naturally tell that the 2 banners were likely the treasures anchoring the Mountain Gate restriction, immortal artifacts forged from the 2 supreme laws of time and space, and of no ordinary grade. Still, neither Husan nor the others felt much resentment. Exploring ruins had always been a matter of ability and fortune. They had simply moved too slowly, and could blame no one but themselves. Congratulations to you both. Before even entering the ruins, you've already obtained 2 treasures, Husan said with a laugh as he formed a seal and shrank back to normal. Haha. This time Brother Li and I were just a step faster. The ruins ahead are sure to contain many treasures. Brother Hu and Brother Hotfire will certainly gain a great deal as well, Shi Chuankong said with a hearty laugh. The purple Dharma idol behind him shrank rapidly and disappeared back into his body. The purple black hole high above also shrank swiftly and soon vanished. Han Li looked up toward where the hole had been, violet light flickering in his eyes. Inside that opening, Devil Chi had turned endlessly dark and bottomless. Even with his 9 nether demon pupils, he had been unable to see to its depths. It had seemed almost like a spatial passageway leading to some unknown place. While these thoughts turned in his mind, He made a beckoning gesture with one hand. The green light around the jade green gourd quickly faded, and its size rapidly shrank as it shot down from the air. With a single flash, the gourd disappeared into Han Li's sleeve. The azure giant sword also flew back. Azure light flickered over it as it split apart once more into 9 bamboo cloudswarm swords, which flashed several times and disappeared into his sleeve as well. Brother Shur and Brother Li contributed the most just now in breaking the restriction, so these 2 treasures rightly belong to you. Venerable Hotfire laughed. As his words fell, the crimson figure behind him vanished as well, turning into streaks of firelight that merged back into his body. Speaking of which, that gourd you summoned earlier, fellow Taoist Li. That was an innate spirit treasure, wasn't it? TSK. Its power was truly astonishing. Fox 3 suddenly looked toward Han Li and asked. Hearing this, Shi Chuankong also turned over with clear interest. Venerable Hotfire had already seen Han Li use the treasure before, so he was not particularly surprised. That's right. That gourd was an innate spirit treasure that Li happened to obtain many years ago by fortunate chance. Its power is acceptable, I suppose, Han Li said without much emphasis. He had given careful thought to revealing the emerald green gourd this time. On one hand, Venerable Hotfire already knew about it, so there was no point in hiding it any longer. On the other, he wanted to display some of his strength so that Fox 3 and Shi Chuankong, both Tai cultivators, would not think him weak and begin entertaining other ideas. Of course, he had still tampered somewhat with the treasure's aura and might, and had not fully revealed its true power. Innate spirit treasures are priceless beyond compare. Every single one is extraordinary, and only those blessed with immense fortune can ever obtain one. It seems fellow Taoist Li is someone favored by destiny. Having you with us on this journey is truly a blessing. Perhaps we can share a little in your good fortune as well, Fox 3 said with a hearty laugh. You jest, fellow Taoist Fox 3. How could my bit of fortune compare to yours? Han Li said, shaking his head. As the few of them spoke and laughed, the white clouds between the mountain gates began to churn violently. Before long they rotated into a massive white vortex, and at its center a narrow passage vaguely emerged. Threads of light seeped out from the passage, giving it an air of deep mystery. All 4 of them looked toward the tunnel at the center of the vortex, each with a flicker in their eyes. We've already spent quite a bit of time breaking the restriction. Let's move, Fox 3 said. Then he took the lead, turning into a streak of silver light and flying into the passage. Venerable Hotfire followed immediately after, becoming a burst of crimson light that shot downward. Han Li moved as well and was just about to follow when he suddenly turned toward Shi Chuankong, who remained standing to one side with no sign of entering. Brother Shi, are you not going in? If you delay, the treasures inside may be stripped clean by those 2. You go ahead, Brother Li. I'll put away this formation first and catch up right after. This formation is a secret art of our devil race and can't be allowed to leak, Shi Chuankong said with a laugh. He waved his hand, releasing a sheet of purple light that covered the silver formation on the ground as he swiftly collected its flags and array plates. Then I'll go on ahead, Han Li said with a nod. He transformed into a streak of azure light and flew into the tunnel. As Shi Chuankong watched Han Li disappear inside, a strange gleam passed through his eyes. His hands moved in quick succession, and in no time he gathered up the entire silver formation. Then his body swayed, turning into a streak of purple light that shot into the passage. Yet at the instant he entered, a tiny purple sphere flew out from his body and remained suspended in midair. It was only the size of a walnut, but its surface was engraved with countless silver runes as small as grains of rice, radiating waves of spatial power. The purple sphere trembled suddenly, then burst with a pop, turning into a dense mass of purple devil cloud in which innumerable silver runes flashed and danced. The cloud billowed and rolled, then twisted like a living thing and drilled into the void. The silver runes, however, did not vanish with it. Instead, they spun rapidly and formed a silver formation several zhang wide. The space at the center of the formation trembled violently a few times, split open, and was pulled wider to both sides. A few breaths later, a purple-black spatial passage appeared out of nowhere. This passage warped from time to time, and purple light flickered within it. It was extremely unstable, as though it might collapse at any moment. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. 3 figures shot out from the spatial passage and landed before the mountain gate. All 3 wore purple robes, emanated dense devilish chi, and were clearly members of the devil race. The one in front was a gaunt old man. The hair on his head was dry, sparse, and withered, his skin dark, and both his cheeks and eye sockets deeply sunken, making him look like a skeleton wrapped in skin. It was a rather terrifying sight. What was more, his arms had no flesh at all. They were 2 pitch-black skeletal arms engraved with wriggling purple runes like earthworms, emanating strong fluctuations of devil chi. Beside him stood a purple-haired young man with a tall, slender frame and extremely handsome features, though his attire was flamboyant to the point of absurdity. His long purple hair nearly reached the ground and was tied high behind him, swaying in the air. Beneath his purple robe he wore a bright red feathered mantle, apparently woven from the plumes of some spiritual bird, so gaudy that the outer robe could not conceal it at all. On his feet were multicolored boots inlaid with jewels that sparkled brilliantly. He looked like an overdressed peacock of a rooster. Beside the purple-haired youth stood a young married woman in purple robes, her hair flowing like a waterfall and her figure graceful and alluring. But her face was covered by a white veil, making her appearance impossible to discern. After the 3 of them emerged, the spatial passage finally gave way. It flickered violently several times, then collapsed completely with a boom, quickly sealing and vanishing. The spatial passage collapsed this quickly. It seems this place lies extremely far from the space where the Black Soil Immortal Domain is located. No wonder we could never determine the position of the ruins no matter what spells we used to investigate. If not for the young master, even another 10,000 years of searching would have been useless, the gaunt elder said, glancing behind him and nodding. His gaze shifted and swept over the surroundings before finally coming to rest on the white vortex. So this is the entrance. It seems the young master and the others have already broken the restriction. Then let's hurry inside, the purple-haired youth said, his eyes lighting up. Before he had even finished speaking, he moved to rush into the tunnel. Wait. The young master already said we are to remain here for half an incense stick of time before entering the ruins. The gaunt elder raised one skeletal arm, and several strands of purple light shot from his fingertips, gleaming with ghostly violet radiance as they blocked the young man's path. I was too impatient. I'll wait a bit first, the purple-haired youth said, his expression changing slightly as he forced a smile. The gaunt elder snorted and only then lowered his arm. The moment Hanli flew into the vortex tunnel, his body was seized by an enormous force and flung away. His vision blurred, and he found himself amid a surging torrent of white light. The white current roared in violent disorder, crashing against itself with deafening thunder. The sight made Hanli's face change. This torrent resembled somewhat the chaotic spatial stream he had once passed through when he had smuggled himself from the spirit realm into the immortal realm. But the spatial force contained in this white current was more than 10 times stronger, and faintly mixed within it was even a trace of the power of time law. Though Hanli's cultivation was now vastly stronger than when he had first crossed into the immortal realm, he still could not stabilize himself and could only be carried forward by the torrent. Wave after wave of immense force surged from all sides, tearing at his body. With a slight hand seal, a crystalline film of starlight appeared over the surface of his body, immediately blocking most of the tearing force. The little that remained could no longer harm him. After doing this, he looked around. All he could see in every direction was the raging white current, Fox 3 Venerable Hotfire, and the others were nowhere to be seen, long since swept off by the torrent to some unknown place. Hanli frowned and was just about to do something, when the flow ahead suddenly flashed, and a mass of brilliant white light appeared out of nowhere, wrapping around him. Within that white radiance was a powerful force of time, though in an extremely chaotic state. Hanli's vision instantly turned into a blinding sheet of white, his eyes stabbing with pain. He hurriedly shut them. In the next moment his body sank abruptly, dragged downward by an enormous force. Boom! Hanli slammed onto something solid, and the surrounding force of spatial chaos vanished without a trace. He opened his eyes and discovered with delight that he had already escaped the white torrent. He had crashed into the ground, however, leaving behind a large crater and sending dust flying in all directions. His body swayed, and he shot out from the pit, hovering in midair as he surveyed the surroundings. The land around him was flat and barren, with almost no vegetation in sight. The sky above was a vast blank white, and white mist drifted everywhere around him. So this is where the ruins of the True Word Gate are, Hanli murmured to himself. It was not at all what he had imagined. Because of the white mist, he could not see very far. His thoughts stirred, and he spread out his spiritual sense. At once his expression changed slightly. The surrounding void was filled with a strange spatial force that greatly suppressed his spiritual sense. Even with the strength of his current divine sense, it could only extend 300 or 400 zhang before reaching its limit. His eyes then glowed with a layer of purple light as he activated the 9 nether devil eyes. Their range exceeded that of his spiritual sense somewhat, but only to about 1,000 zhang. The white mist was clearly no ordinary fog either. It hindered the 9 nether devil eyes severely. The surroundings were strange, but after a moment of surprise Hanli quickly regained his composure. He had explored countless secret realms and ancient ruins before. Compared to some of those, this environment was nothing. His body flashed and returned to the ground. With a flip of his hand, a purple light appeared before him, revealing a palm-sized purple jade disc engraved with silver runes that formed an intricate array. This object was a communication array disc Shi Chuankong had given him before they entered Mirage Smoke Marsh. It had been refined using a unique Devil Domain secret art, mixed with a thread of spatial power, and could transmit messages across spatial barriers. Its effectiveness far surpassed that of ordinary communication array discs, making it especially suitable for use inside all manner of secret realms. Hanli formed hand seals, and the purple jade disc floated into the air. As it spun, it released a ring of purple light that flickered bright and dim. A good while passed, yet the disc gave no response at all. Hanli frowned. After waiting another moment and still receiving nothing, he waved it away and put it back. He did not know what had caused the communication disc to fail, but being unable to contact Fox 3 and the others was troublesome indeed. Without finding Fox 3, completing the mission assigned by the Reincarnation Palace would be out of the question. After all, Hanli still did not know the details of the mission. He had asked Fox 3 about it before, but the man had only smiled and said he would explain once they arrived. Who would have thought that the moment they entered this place, they would already be scattered into different regions? Hanli stood there frowning in thought for a while, then shook his head and relaxed his brow. Since he could not find Fox 3 and the others for the time being, he might as well explore on his own first. He was very curious about the legendary ruins of the True Word Gate. From what he currently knew, the 2 great abilities he cultivated, the True Word Treasure Will Scripture and Law Words Heaven and Earth, had both originated here and neither was complete. Perhaps he might find some clues in this place. Right. Hanli was just about to set off when he suddenly remembered something and waved his hand. A clump of green light flew from his body, and with a flash turned into a jade-green gourd. Hanli made a seal and beckoned. A golden light flew out from the gourd, none other than the golden command flag, which floated before him and turned gently. He reached out, took the flag into his hand and examined it closely. Seen at close range it looked even more extraordinary. The golden star patterns on its surface flickered as though alive, as if they might fly out of the flag at any moment. Moreover, he could sense powerful fluctuations of the law of time emanating from within it, no weaker than the little golden lock given to him by Elder Jingyang, and perhaps even slightly stronger. So it really is a ranked immortal artifact. Hanli was delighted. He opened his mouth and spat out a stream of golden light that wrapped around the flag and drew it into his body for full refinement. Now that he was in an unfamiliar place with an uncertain road ahead, every slight increase in strength was necessary. Afterward Hanli put away the jade-green gourd, looked around once more, then chose a direction and flew off. Because this place restricted both spiritual sense and vision, he flew very slowly. He kept his spiritual sense fully spread at all times despite the great strain, while the 9 nether devil eyes also operated at full force, watching every movement in the area. Though the ruins seemed utterly still and silent, they gave him an inexplicable pressure that kept him from relaxing in the slightest. Fellow Taoist Han, could it be that you've already entered the ruins of the True Word Gate? Back when I was following Ma Liang, I vaguely heard the name of the True Word Gate as well. You're alone now, aren't you? Why not let me out? Mo Guang's voice suddenly rang out in his mind. You've finished your seclusion? Hanli was taken aback. He had not expected Mo Guang to speak up at this moment. After all these years of effort, I'm finally fully compatible with this body. Heh. I won't fall back out of the Tai realm again in the future, Mo Guang said with a chuckle. Is that so? Then congratulations, Hanli replied, brows lifting slightly. Heh, fellow Taoist Han, when it comes to advancing into the Tai realm, this Mo has taken the first step ahead of you, Mo Guang said, seemingly unable to contain his excitement and sounding rather smug. Hanli only smiled faintly and paid no mind to the boasting. He held the law of time in his grasp. His true strength could not be measured merely by cultivation realm. Even if Mo Guang had just entered the Tai realm, or even reached the mid-Tai stage, Hanli was still confident he could deal with him. Of course, with your astonishing talent, fellow Taoist Han, it won't be long before you also step into the Tai realm, Mo Guang added hurriedly, realizing he had become a little too carried away. Since fellow Taoist Mo Guang has only just stabilized his cultivation, it would be better for you to continue consolidating it in the flower branch space. If I need your help later, I'll call on you then, Hanli transmitted. The true word gate ruins were strange enough already. It would be best not to reveal Mo Guang's identity as a gray immortal casually. Very well, Mo Guang sighed, and his voice fell silent. Hanli ignored him and continued focusing on the surrounding environment. Time passed little by little, and in the blink of an eye more than half a day had gone by. Yet the landscape around him had barely changed at all. It remained desolate. A trace of weariness had begun to appear on Hanli's face. In such an environment, keeping both his spiritual sense and 9 nether devil eyes fully activated for so long was no small burden even for him. He had just taken out a restorative pill and swallowed it when his brows suddenly rose and he stopped, looking down toward the ground below. With a flicker he descended. Something like a large stone was half buried in the earth before him, covered in a thick layer of dust so that its true nature could not be seen. Hanli formed a seal with one hand and flicked it upward. A whirlwind several zhang high appeared out of thin air. Go, he said softly, sweeping his sleeve. The whirlwind roared toward the stone, instantly sweeping away all the dust and revealing what lay beneath. It turned out to be a fragment of pale blue wall, apparently built from some special kind of stone. Though it had been buried here for who knew how many years, it had neither weathered nor decayed. A flicker of joy appeared on Hanli's face. He did not linger and soon pressed onward. The farther he went, the more green vegetation began to appear. The land was no longer as barren as before, and the remnants of collapsed walls and ruined buildings became more frequent as well. A little later, he descended again. Ahead lay a massive palace complex occupying several hundred zhang and standing 20 to 30 zhang high, entirely constructed from that same pale blue material. If it had once been intact, it must have been quite magnificent. But now it was riddled with holes and nearly half of it had collapsed outright. The ground near the palace was equally torn and scarred, as though it had undergone a tremendously fierce battle. After a brief thought, Hanli spread out his spiritual sense to investigate the surroundings. A while later, his brow twitched. With a flicker, he shot toward a large stone and pushed it aside. Beneath it lay a corpse that had long since turned to white bones. The skeleton wore a white robe. Though much of it had weathered away, Hanli could still make out that it was the attire of the true word gate, the same as the clothing of the sect disciples he had seen back when he traversed time and space. Looking at the ruins and the bones before him, Hanli sighed softly. Since he himself cultivated the true word gate's arts, he could be said to share at least a little karmic connection with this sect. From Venerable Hotfire, he had also heard some descriptions of the true word gate's former grandeur. And yet that once powerful sect had now fallen into ruins. It was hard not to feel some melancholy. Hanli quickly set aside such thoughts and swept his spiritual sense over the skeleton. There was no storage artifact on it. Apparently it had already been taken by someone else. He did not pay this much mind. Turning away, he continued exploring the rest of the palace and soon found several more skeletons. Judging by their clothing, they too had been disciples of the true word gate. Likewise, all of their storage artifacts were gone. After some time, Hanli finished searching the palace ruins and found nothing of value. He felt a slight regret but did not linger. His body flashed and he turned into a streak of azure light, flying onward. He had not gone very far when his expression changed abruptly. With a sudden stop, he stared ahead, purple light blazing from his eyes. He raised a hand and pointed. A thick streak of azure sword chi shot out and struck a patch of empty space ahead. The void there rippled violently, and a mass of black light emerged. The azure sword chi slammed into it and vanished at once, as if it had been swallowed. The black light trembled a few times and turned into a black arc of light about half a zhang long. It wriggled like a living thing for a moment, then slowly faded back into invisibility. Could that be a spatial rift? Han Li murmured, eyes flickering. Once hidden in the void, the black arc emitted no aura whatsoever. Had Han Li not kept his spiritual sense fully extended and his 9 nether devil eyes active, he would never have noticed it. After a brief moment of thought, he raised his hand again. A thick, powerful arc of golden lightning shot forth with a peal of thunder and struck the position of the black arc. The black arc reappeared, rippled slightly, and once again swallowed the golden lightning with ease. Han Li looked at the sight, surprise showing on his face, and waved his hand again. A flash of red light. A crimson flying sword appeared and rapidly enlarged, becoming a giant sword 10 zhang long. It flashed and slashed across the black arc. With a soft tearing sound, the giant blade was instantly cut cleanly in two the moment it touched the black arc. Han Li's heart tightened. Fortunately, he had discovered the black arc in time. Otherwise, even someone like him might have been gravely wounded if he had collided with it head-on, if not killed outright. That would have been an absurdly unjust way to die. With that thought, Han Li casually put away the broken sword halves on the ground and circled around the black arc before continuing forward. From that point on, he became even more cautious. He did not dare relax either his spiritual sense or his devil eyes for even an instant. The farther he went, the more ruined buildings he encountered. Yet without exception, all of them had been utterly destroyed in fierce battle. Thus probing his way onward, Han Li spent another half-day passing through the ruins. By now, his expression had darkened. The True Word Gate ruins had been destroyed far too thoroughly. After searching for so long, aside from a few spirit herbs of decent age, he had found nothing at all, not even a single living creature. This vast region was no different from a city of the dead. The land below remained a plain for the most part, though occasional peaks had begun to appear. After flying forward for a while, Han Li's expression shifted. The ground ahead suddenly dipped downward, forming the terrain of a huge valley, and within it there seemed to be another cluster of palace shadows, this time looking relatively intact. His spirits lifted, and he immediately flew over, landing inside the valley. The valley was enormous. With his current spiritual sense and eyesight, he could not probe to its edges at all and could only glimpse the tip of the iceberg. The ground within was flat, paved everywhere with white jade that stretched to the limits of his sight. Large and small structures stood throughout, extending all the way to the edge of his vision. This place appeared to be important. The valley had not escaped the flames of war either. Marks of battle could be seen everywhere. But the materials used here were much superior, and most of the buildings had survived in relatively good condition. A faint excitement rose in Han Li's heart. Investigating the surroundings as he went, he moved deeper into the valley. The farther in he went, the more intense the signs of battle became. Corpses lay in many places, some belonging to disciples of the True Word Gate, and many others to cultivators of the heavenly court. Judging from what he had observed along the way, the valley resembled a vast city. There were many crisscrossing streets, and the buildings on both sides looked very much like shops. Had it not been destroyed, this must once have been an extraordinarily magnificent city. Along the way, Han Li also found a few good materials. At the end of a broad street, the area ahead suddenly opened up, and a huge plaza appeared before him. Han Li's gaze swept quickly across the plaza, and he let out a soft sound of surprise. His body shot forward at once, and he soon landed before a giant palace on the far side of the square. This palace was much grander than the others, built entirely from a kind of translucent deep blue crystal that shimmered with a faint blue glow, making it look like a crystal palace beneath the sea. Han Li recognized the material. Sea blue crystal, a water aspect crystal famed for its toughness. It was not top tier, but it was still rather precious. To use it in constructing an entire palace was a lavish display indeed. But the reason he had rushed over was not the material of the hall. Though faint, Hanli could sense a fluctuation of the law of time from deep within the palace. Perhaps because the entire structure was built from sea blue crystal, the palace had remained largely intact despite having suffered damage. Even the plaque above the gate had survived. Water Evolution Palace. Hanli looked at the plaque, stirred slightly, and was just about to step inside when his attention was suddenly drawn to something beside the gate. It was a dark blue-black stone statue lying toppled on the ground, over 100 zhang tall. A bizarre child figure with a large head and a narrow body. The base of the statue had been severed, apparently cut off by a single sword stroke. Hanli's gaze shifted to a giant stone pedestal nearby. The break on its surface matched the fracture at the bottom of the statue, showing that the statue had originally stood there. As Hanli looked at the big-headed child statue, he felt it was somehow familiar, as though he had seen it somewhere before. Of course, that's him. After studying it for another moment, he suddenly recalled. Back when he had observed Patriarch Miro giving a sermon through the crystal wall, the great-eared monk surrounded by 5 seated figures, one of them had been a strange child with a large head and small body. In appearance and shape, that figure was nearly identical to this statue. But why would that person's statue appear here? Could Water Evolution Palace have some connection to that big-headed child? Hanli pondered for a moment, then quickly set the question aside and stepped into the hall. The moment he entered, the light around him dimmed, and an odd sense of oppression pressed down on him. He frowned slightly but did not stop. The palace interior was rather empty. Aside from several giant pillars of sea blue crystal, there was little else. Signs of battle were plentiful here too. One of the pillars had even been severed outright. Hanli searched the hall thoroughly but found nothing, so he continued deeper inside and soon arrived at the very back. Here, set into the left and right walls, were 2 enormous doorways. Behind them stretched 2 long black corridors winding away into the depths, dark and bottomless. When he had been outside, Hanli had already noticed that behind the Blue Palace there stood many more buildings, forming what looked like a large architectural complex. Looking at the 2 corridors, he briefly sensed the location of the time law fluctuation. It lay somewhere ahead and slightly to the right, so he entered the right-hand corridor without hesitation. The corridor was built entirely from some kind of black stone that gave off a threat of cold, like chill. There were many traces of combat here too. The black walls on both sides were scarred with cuts from sharp weapons, and the floor was crisscrossed with cracks. The black walls seemed extremely sturdy, however, and had not been destroyed in battle. Aside from that, he occasionally saw 1 or 2 corpses of True Word Gate disciples or Heavenly Court cultivators. Perhaps because the corridor was relatively enclosed, the surrounding sinister baleful qi gradually grew thicker, and gusts of eerie wind blew in from ahead, carrying faint moaning sounds. Hanli frowned slightly. With baleful qi already lingering in his body, he instinctively disliked such an environment, but naturally he would not retreat over something so minor. The black corridor was astonishingly long. Hanli walked for nearly half a quarter hour without reaching its end. If anything, it gradually widened and grew taller. The farther inward he went, the denser the baleful qi in the air became, stirring the baleful energies within his own body. Hanli immediately circulated his cultivation method to protect himself, sealing out the outside baleful qi. He continued some distance farther when his expression changed faintly and he stopped. Though very faint, a few rumbling sounds came from ahead, and the ground shook slightly twice, as if someone were fighting. A flicker passed through Hanli's eyes, and he began murmuring an incantation. A layer of dim light emerged and enveloped his body. Very quickly, he turned into a shadowy blur and silently shot forward. After flying on for a short while, the corridor finally came to an end. Ahead lay a gloomy cluster of palaces, one connected to another. Passageways linked the various halls in every direction, creating a maze-like tangle that could leave anyone dazzled. After a brief check, Hanli followed the sounds of battle. Crossing more than a dozen halls, he soon found the source. A great hall covering several thousand zhang. Inside stood thick stone pillars, each so wide that 10 or more people with linked arms could barely encircle one. Their surfaces were engraved with runes, though their purpose was unknown. More than half the pillars had collapsed, exposing a wide open area. Within that space, 3 cultivators were locked in fierce combat with 5 or 6 shadowy figures. One of the 3 was a robust man built like an iron tower, wearing a blue cloak and wielding a blue giant sword the size of a door panel. Another was a graceful woman in purple robes, her face veiled so that her features could not be seen. Dense devil chi coiled around her, marking her as a member of the devil race. The last was a handsome man dressed in red, his face seemingly powdered and painted, giving him an oddly androgynous appearance. Han Li's brows lifted slightly. He recognized the handsome man in red. He was Feng Qingyuan, whom Han Li had once encountered in Wild Crane Valley. He had not expected to meet him again here. It seemed that the Reincarnation Palace was not the only side coveting the True Word Gate ruins. The Heavenly Court had clearly prepared long in advance as well. The only question was how they had entered this place and from where. The shadowy creatures fighting the 3 cultivators were black humanoid monsters, several zhang tall and covered all over in black fur, resembling enormous black apes. Each of them also had 2 dark red horns growing from its head. Their eyes were blood red and flashed with savagery, while their fangs jutted from their mouths as they let out shrill roars from time to time. "What are those?" Han Li muttered in surprise from behind a pillar as he watched the black ape-like monsters. Their appearance was not especially remarkable, but their strength was impressive. Despite their huge bodies, they moved like the wind, and their bodies were so sturdy that they could clash head-on with Feng Qingyuan's group and their immortal artifacts without suffering any harm. From time to time, black flames shot from the mouths of the ape monsters. The 3 cultivators were clearly very wary of those flames and rarely met them head-on, choosing instead to dodge again and again. Though Feng Qingyuan's group had fallen somewhat onto the defensive, all 3 were evidently battle-hardened and showed no sign of panic. They fought steadily, and no matter how ferocious the ape monsters' attacks became, the 3 still held them off. After watching the battle for a few moments, Han Li shifted his gaze and looked around the hall, but saw no sign of any treasure. It appeared that these 3 were not fighting to seize some prize. They had merely had the misfortune of running into a pack of ape monsters and become entangled with them. Since there was no treasure here, Han Li had no intention of revealing himself and joining the fray. His body stirred as he quietly prepared to leave. Yet the instant he moved, a vicious wind struck from behind. A pitch-black beast claw appeared out of thin air at his back and slashed down toward his heart. Han Li's face changed. He shot forward like lightning while whipping his arm around. An azure sword light burst from his sleeve, then appeared behind him in a flash and slashed swiftly toward the black beast claw. Bang! The azure sword light shuddered and shattered, revealing itself as an azure flying sword that tumbled spinning toward the front. On the black beast claw, however, a long wound had been cut, nearly splitting the palm in half. A giant black ape monster flashed out from the darkness to one side and let out a furious roar at Han Li. This ape monster was nearly twice the size of the others. Blood-red patterns floated amid the black fur of its skin, covering its entire body and making it look even more savage. Black chi coiled around its enormous frame, and within that black chi there floated a black banner, its spiritual light flickering as it emitted not weak fluctuations of law power. It was in fact an immortal artifact. As the black ape roared, black light flashed repeatedly from its palm, and the surrounding sinister baleful chi came surging in and merged into its body. The wound on its hand healed at a speed visible to the naked eye, vanishing in the blink of an eye. Seeing this, Han Li's face showed a trace of surprise. He waved his hand to recall the green bamboo cloud swarm sword, then dropped lightly to the ground. This exchange had taken place in an instant, swift as lightning. Over on the other side, Feng Qingyuan and the other 2 had also noticed the disturbance and all looked over in surprise. The blood-patterned giant ape let out another roar, its massive body turning into a black shadow as it lunged toward Han Li. Humph! Han Li snorted coldly and swept his sleeve. A thick arc of golden lightning shot forth toward the blood-patterned giant ape. It was none other than the evil-repelling divine thunder. Where the golden lightning passed, the nearby sinister baleful chi dispersed instantly like snow under the blazing sun. Yet the blood-patterned giant ape showed not the slightest fear. It opened its mouth and spat out a stream of black flame. A thunderous boom erupted. Lightning and flame collided and instantly began to coil and churn together, like a golden dragon and a black dragon tangled together, biting and tearing at one another without end, as though neither could gain the upper hand. Han Li's brow lifted slightly. He opened his mouth and spat. Another azure flying sword shot forth like lightning, its surface wrapped in golden arcs. In a flash it pierced through the storm of thunder and flame at an unbelievable speed. With a muffled bang, the black flames burst apart and scattered into a rain of fading embers. The azure flying sword did not stop. It shot onward, blurred once, and appeared directly before the blood-patterned giant ape, chopping down in a savage stroke. Roar! A low growl rumbled out of the blood-marked giant ape's throat. At once, the black banner above its head swept downward in reverse, unfurling 10,000 streaks of dark radiance that looked like a massive black hand, instantly wrapping itself around the descending azure flying sword. Han Li, seeing this, merely gave a cold laugh and formed a sword incantation with one hand. The azure sword suddenly trembled violently, bursting with dazzling green light. Thick arcs of golden lightning coursed through it, crackling as the blade twisted savagely. With a tearing sound, the black banner was ripped apart on the spot, splitting into several tattered fragments that scattered through the air. The azure flying sword did not pause in the slightest. It continued downward, slashing toward the blood-marked giant ape below. Terror flashed across the ape's face, and the blood-red patterns covering its body blazed brilliantly. With a soft burst, a pair of crimson wings materialized out of thin air behind its back and beat furiously. The giant ape's body blurred, leaving a trail of afterimages as it shifted sideways with astonishing speed. A muffled ripping sound followed. The ape reappeared several dozen yards away, but a long deep sword wound had opened across its left shoulder. Its entire left arm had nearly been severed, yet not a drop of blood flowed. This black ape-like monster was evidently no creature of flesh and blood. Han Li showed no surprise. He casually raised a hand and beckoned. The azure flying sword immediately shot back. With a flash of green light, it split into 3 small azure swords and vanished into his sleeve. It had actually been a fusion of 3 flying swords all along. Fury and shock twisted the blood-marked giant ape's grotesque features, yet instead of lunging at him again, it threw back its head and opened its mouth wide. A stream of pitch-black flames poured out without end, instantly turning into a towering sea of dark fire that surged toward Han Li with incredible speed. The black flames spread over such a vast area that there seemed to be no way to avoid them. Han Li's brows stirred faintly. His shoulders shook. Thunder boomed. Countless golden arcs of lightning erupted around him, then poured outward in a tide of golden thunder that collided head-on with the black sea of flames. The two forces tangled together once more. A string of earth-shaking explosions erupted in succession. Their might was evenly matched. Neither could overwhelm the other, and once again they remained locked in a dead standstill. The stone pillars nearby shattered one after another, rubble spraying through the air as the entire hall shook violently. Yet this grand hall, whether because of the incredible sturdiness of its materials or because of some internal restriction reinforcing it, did not collapse beneath the shockwaves. At that very moment, Han Li formed another incantation. Golden lightning flashed over his body, and he vanished instantly. The blood-marked giant ape was clever enough. The instant it saw this, it beat its crimson wings and prepared to flee. But just then, a cold snort rang out directly inside its mind. A sharp and brutal surge of spiritual force stabbed into its consciousness. Pain contorted the giant ape's face. It let out a miserable scream, and its retreating form faltered mid-flight. Almost at the same time, a flash of golden light appeared near its right arm. A massive golden lock materialized from nowhere, snapping shut around the limb with a crisp metallic sound. Boundless golden light burst from the lock. A huge ancient golden character meaning seal flickered into being and stamped itself onto the blood-marked giant ape's body. Its entire body stiffened as though frozen solid, could not move in the slightest. With another flash of golden lightning, Han Li appeared behind it. He raised his arm and 2 fingers, clear and smooth as jade, touched lightly against the back of the ape's skull, as though plucking a flower petal. A dazzling crystalline light flashed. Within that light, the faint image of a silver blossom could be seen before it sank into the giant ape's head. Its skull instantly split into several pieces, yet after the crystalline light passed, those shattered fragments remained in place, motionless. Han Li withdrew his fingers and tapped another incantation into the air. The golden character on the ape's body vanished at once, and the large golden lock shrank in a flash to the size of a palm before dropping into his hand. Over the years, he had long since finished refining this little golden lock. Now that he had tested it in actual combat for the first time, its power had indeed proven extraordinary. He put the golden lock away. The instant he did, the giant ape's broken head exploded completely, dissolving into a vast cloud of black vapor. Its headless corpse shuddered violently, then also disintegrated into thick black fiendish chi that scattered in all directions. A fist-sized black crystal emerged from within the drifting dark vapor and fell toward the ground. Han Li waved a hand, sending out a streak of azure light that wrapped around it and drew it into his grasp. The black crystal radiated an incredibly intense fiend aura. It was plainly something like the blood-marked giant ape's core. So it was an Earth Soul fiend after all, Han Li murmured, his brow lifting slightly. Though it bore the name of a demon beast, the Earth Soul fiend was actually a type of ghostly entity. It could only be born in places where corpse chi and fiendish chi were both extremely dense. It excelled at concealment and ambush, possessed a fair amount of intelligence, and was a particularly dangerous kind of ghost creature. What pure fiendish crystal! Give it to me, fellow Taoist Han. It will be useful to me. Mo Guang's voice sounded in Han Li's mind. Han Li glanced at the black crystal in his hand, then with a flip of his wrist stored it in the flower branch space and tossed it to Mo Guang. With the blood-marked giant ape slain, the other black apes on the far side cried out in terror, abruptly turned, and fled into the distance in streaks of afterimages. In the blink of an eye they had vanished. The three others made no move to stop them. They put away their immortal treasures, exchanged glances, and then all turned to look at Han Li. Many thanks, fellow Taoist, for killing that Earth Soul Ghost King and frightening away the others. Otherwise, the three of us might not have been able to free ourselves for who knows how long, the burly man said with a smile, cupping his hands toward Han Li. Feng Qingyuan and the purple-robed young woman also voiced their thanks. You three are too courteous. With your abilities, if you had truly wished to leave, why would you have needed my assistance? Han Li replied with a faint smile. Though the three before him had each used secret techniques to conceal their cultivation, Han Li's spiritual sense had long since probed the truth well enough. Their auras were immense. Their cultivation was not much lower than his own. At the very least, all three were late-stage golden immortal cultivators. In the battle just now against those Earth Soul ape fiends, they had not displayed their true strength at all. Compared with fighting those fiends, they had devoted far more attention to guarding against one another. The burly man, Feng Qingyuan, and the purple-robed young woman all had a flicker in their eyes when they heard this. Haha, whatever the case, we still owe you thanks for lending a hand just now, the burly man said with a hearty laugh. Han Li nodded slightly. His face remained calm, but his thoughts were racing. He could not immediately discern the origins of this burly man, but Feng Qingyuan he recognized. And as for this purple-robed young woman, she was clearly a member of the devil race. Her appearance in the ruins of the True Word Gate could hardly be unrelated to Sichuan Kong. Since the four of us have met here, it must be fate. Why not properly get acquainted and explore these ruins together? After all, none of us know what lies ahead, the burly man said. He seemed to be the sort who was both eloquent and good at handling people. That makes sense. This place is treacherous and unpredictable. Moving together would indeed be better, Han Li said. So many extra people had appeared for no reason at all. This journey into the ruins of the True Word Gate had clearly gained many more uncertainties, and Han Li even felt there were countless hidden details here that he still knew nothing about. Though the three before him were formidable, Han Li was still confident he could deal with them. If they traveled together, he could use the opportunity to investigate a few things. Feng Qingyuan and the purple-robed young woman both hesitated briefly, then nodded as well. Haha, excellent. Then I'll introduce myself first. My surname is Ran, given name Hao, the burly man said, smiling as he cupped his hands toward the others. Li Jianglu, Han Li replied, giving the same name that appeared on the identity token Hu San had procured for him from the Tiansha sect. Yuan Feng, Feng Qingyan said, reversing the order of his real name. Feng Lin, the purple-robed young woman said with a lovely smile. The four of them exchanged names. Whether the names were true or false, the heavy atmosphere of mutual suspicion eased somewhat. Though Ranhao was broad-shouldered and imposing, he was unexpectedly skilled in conversation. After chatting and joking with the others for a while, the mood among them seemed to grow more harmonious. Even so, all of them instinctively avoided certain sensitive topics. I wonder how long the three of you have been here. I only just arrived myself. Palace after palace stretches on in this place. It looks like an imperial city, but I've only explored a small area, and I still have no clear idea what's going on, Renhao said with a wry smile. I also arrived only recently. In fact, I'm probably later than the three of you. Right now I'm still completely in the dark as well, Hanli said, shaking his head. Feng Qingyuan and Feng Lin also shook their heads, indicating they knew nothing about this place and were still in the process of exploring. In that case, let's continue forward. This area does not seem too heavily damaged. There may well be treasures left behind, though everyone should be careful not to trigger any traps or restrictions, Renhao said after a brief pause. Han Li and the other two nodded in succession. None of them objected. After a short rest, the group of four quickly continued onward. As they walked, they spoke from time to time, but still kept a certain distance from one another. Han Li walked at the rear, examining the surroundings while countless thoughts churned in his mind. The Heavenly Court and the Devil Race had both interfered in the ruins of the True Word Gate. Did Husan and revered Immortal Rohua know about this? If they truly did not know, that was one thing. But if those three had known from the start and were deliberately keeping him in the dark, then he would have to be very careful. Thinking this, Han Li could not help feeling some regret over accepting this mission. But matters had already come this far. He could only press forward. They passed through several more palaces, and at last emerged from the endless complex. The view ahead suddenly opened up, but the flat ground gave way to rising terrain, as though they had arrived before a hillside. A broad, straight white jade road appeared on the ground, extending upward toward the mountain. A flicker glimmered deep in Han Li's eyes. By this point, the fluctuations of the law of time had become quite strong. They were coming from somewhere ahead along this white jade road. But the fluctuations were so obvious that the other three beside him had certainly sensed them as well. How he was to seize that object for himself would require very careful thought. As he considered this, he cast an inconspicuous glance at the three beside him, only to pause in surprise. The three of them were also gazing into the distance. There was a trace of anticipation amid their blank expressions, yet none of them showed the slightest sign of delight. Han Li withdrew his gaze, and a thought stirred in his heart. Judging from their expressions, Feng Qingyuan and the others seemed not to have sensed the fluctuations of the law of time at all. If all three of them were acting, then their performance was flawless. He could not detect the least opening. It seems there are more structures ahead. We didn't carefully search the palace complex we just passed through either. What do the three of you intend to do now? Continue forward, or return to investigate the palaces further? Renhao asked, looking toward the others. None of Han Li's group answered, but all their eyes turned forward. It seems great minds think alike. In that case, let us continue onward, Renhao said with a chuckle. Then the four of them set out side by side. Though the white jade road was broad, it was not long for cultivators like them, and before long they reached its end. There was a plaza atop the mountain roughly 1,000 yards across. The ground was paved with blocks of white jade tile, and in the center stood a black-blue stone statue over 100 yards tall. It was, once again, that large-headed child. This statue had not been damaged. It stood there quietly, as though it had endured through endless ages. The four of them looked at the statue for only a moment before shifting their attention to the far end of the plaza. There, 5 smaller white jade roads extended onward, each winding away in a different direction before disappearing into the white mist ahead. Beside each road stood a blue jade stele taller than a person, bearing one of 5 place names: Disciple Plain, 3 Waters Tower, 5 Spirits Pavilion, Changtian Hall, and Heavenly Medicine Valley. Seeing this, each of the 4 showed a different expression. Han Li's gaze flickered as he looked at those 5 names. Judging from the names alone, Disciple Plain and Heavenly Medicine Valley were easy enough to guess. They were likely the residence area for the disciples of the Water Branch Palace of the True Word Gate, and the place where spirit herbs and medicinal pills had been stored. But the names Three Waters Tower, Five Spirits Pavilion, and Chengtian Hall were too vague. He could not infer their exact nature. Ren Hao, Feng Qingyuan and Feng Lin were likewise studying the 5 roads, their expressions shifting uncertainly. The road ahead now splits. Seems we must part ways here. Which path do you all intend to take? Ren Hao asked after composing himself. Han Li's gaze drifted toward the second road, the one marked Three Waters Tower. He could clearly sense that the fluctuations of the law of time were coming from there. Just as he was about to speak, Ren Hao suddenly said, I'll take this path. The cultivation art I practice is of the water attribute, so I'll follow the fitting choice and head to the Three Waters Tower. Han Li's eyelids twitched, but he immediately recovered. This humble one would like to visit Heavenly Medicine Valley. Perhaps I can pick a few spirit herbs suitable for my use, Feng Lin said casually as she brushed aside a strand of hanging hair. In that case, I shall choose Chengtian Hall. It has a good name. I can only hope for some harvest there, Feng Qingyuan said, already stepping onto the 4th road. Han Li said nothing. He silently walked onto the 3rd road, the one marked 5 Spirits Pavilion. Now that everyone has chosen, then let us part once more. I wish all of us fruitful gains, Ren Hao said with a long laugh, stepping onto the 2nd road and striding away. His figure quickly vanished into the mist ahead. Han Li and the others also each took their chosen road and soon disappeared. Before long, the White Jade Plaza fell silent. A short while later, a streak of azure shot back from the 3rd road and landed in the plaza, revealing Han Li. He glanced to either side, then tapped his foot lightly. His body once more became a blurred azure shadow, slipping soundlessly toward the road marked Three Waters Tower. Not long after Han Li vanished, another figure appeared on the 4th road. It was Feng Qingyuan. Without the slightest hesitation, he too stepped onto the 2nd road, his form quickly vanishing. Hardly had Feng Qingyuan disappeared when a flash of purple light appeared and Feng Lin emerged in the plaza as well. Her beautiful eyes flickered. Then she too stepped onto the 2nd road. Han Li had concealed every trace of his aura as he moved steadily inward along the road. Before long, the terrain opened up ahead. Roughly 1,000 yards in front of him stood a huge 3-story tower-like palace. Its lowest level was octagonal in shape, built from enormous square green bricks. Fine runic patterns had been carved into the surface, and a giant arched gate, nearly 10 feet tall, stood directly before him. Han Li swept his gaze over the surroundings. He found no trace of Ren Hao, nor anything else unusual. At once his figure flickered several times and shot forward. When he reached the archway, he saw that the dark hall doors stood open inward. The eyes of the 2 ring-holding beasts mounted on the doors had already shattered, seemingly the remnants of whatever restrictions had once been broken there. He did not enter immediately. Instead, he stood at the threshold and peered inward for a while. All he could see was a thin layer of pale mist filling the interior. It looked insubstantial, almost weightless, yet it prevented him from seeing anything clearly. After a moment's thought, Han Li stepped across the threshold. The instant he entered, his brows knit together. The blue mist around him suddenly thickened several-fold, and a harsh, choking odor began to spread through the air. At almost the same moment, a searing heat rose beneath his feet. Han Li looked down and was startled. At some point, the ground beneath him had turned into a sea of crimson fire. The fierce flames had already begun to burn his boots and robes, and thick black smoke was rising from them. That acrid smell came precisely from this. Another illusion, Han Li murmured, his brows faintly furrowing. A thought moved through his mind, and the spirit refinement art immediately began to circulate in silence. In the next instant it felt as though a cool breeze swept through his sea of consciousness, restoring it at once to perfect clarity. At the same time, the flames covering his body rapidly shrank and receded. The tongues of fire dwindled quickly, then dispersed altogether into specks of light. Only the hall full of blue mist remained, still gathered thickly without dispersing. A violet glow flashed through Han Li's eyes as he activated the 9 nether demon pupil and swept his gaze around. The interior of the great hall, previously hidden by the blue mist, instantly appeared before him in full detail. The vast hall was in utter ruins. Broken stone pillars and shattered timbers were strewn everywhere. The floor was pitted and scorched black, all of it stained with dried, congealed blood. A layer of withered corpses nearly covered the entire hall. Every one of them had died in grotesque and miserable fashion. Judging from the surviving remnants of robes still not entirely decayed, some of the dead had been disciples of the true word gate, while others had belonged to the heavenly court. Clearly, a brutally savage slaughter had once taken place here. Amid the densely piled corpses were also many blue humanoid puppets, most of them smashed to pieces and completely drained of spiritual power. The palace interior was divided by many walls. Following the layout deeper inward, Hanli searched as he went. The walls along the way were scarred beyond recognition, covered in black bloodstains and broken bones, while huge cracks gouged deep into the masonry, shocking to behold. In the innermost hall, Hanli saw a massive white jade staircase winding upward to the second floor. A broad-bladed giant sword was still embedded in the steps. Though its surface had corroded so badly, it was now no different from ordinary iron. Around the great sword, corpses lay scattered in layers, piled nearly 10 feet high. Hanli's eyes narrowed. After stepping across the bones and searching the hall, he found nothing useful, so he headed toward the staircase. His body moved like a ghost, gliding over the corpses without making the slightest sound. When he reached the stairs, he leapt lightly, touching the hilt of the giant sword with the tip of his toe. With a flash, he landed on the second floor of the palace. The moment he entered, a bone-piercing chill assaulted him. The immortal spiritual power in his body began circulating automatically to resist the freezing cold. He looked ahead and felt as though he had stepped into an entirely different world of extreme frost. The floor was covered in a thick layer of blue ice crystal. The stone pillars were encased in heavy sheets of ice. The walls and window lattices were completely sealed beneath it as well, and countless icicles hung upside down from above. Everywhere was a deep icy blue, giving Hanli the illusion that the second floor was even larger than the first. In truth, it only seemed so because the second floor lacked the many dividing walls of the lower level, and thus appeared more open. One thing was the same, however. The floor here too was strewn with countless corpses of True Word Gate disciples and heavenly court members, each one dead in equally miserable fashion. Yet the bodies here had clearly belonged to more powerful cultivators in life. Faint traces of spiritual light still lingered on their remains, and most of their faces had not entirely rotted away. In addition, in some areas near the walls, Hanli saw the massive corpses of many demon beasts. Nearly all of them were horribly mangled, their skulls shattered and bones scattered, making it difficult to identify what they had originally been. Whether human or beast, the fiendish aura congealed around the bones here was far denser than on the first floor. Hanli walked slowly through the second-floor hall, expressionless as he passed corpse after corpse and headed toward the huge frozen staircase at the deepest end. After he had gone several dozen yards, his expression suddenly changed, and he lowered his head to look beneath him. The smooth ice crystal floor, clear as a mirror, was empty. It reflected only his own figure. Just now I clearly sensed a trace of something unusual, Hanli muttered, a puzzled look appearing on his face. At that moment, his brows suddenly lifted. To his astonishment, the reflection in the ice beneath him abruptly curled its lips into a grotesque smile, one far wider than any normal face could make. At nearly the same instant, Hanli twisted his wrist and a green bamboo cloudswarm sword appeared in his hand. Sword chi surged as he thrust straight down toward the reflection beneath him. Yet the reflection moved like a fish gliding through water, slipping away from the blade with a single smooth motion. Then, just as if it had been smoke turning solid, it burst out from the ice directly in front of Hanli. Its form shifted from illusion to substance as both hands shot toward Hanli's chest. Hanli's heart tightened slightly. At that moment, his so-called reflection no longer bore the slightest resemblance to him. Its body looked like that of an ordinary person, but its clothes were tattered beyond repair, and its face was rotted away to expose white bone beneath. It looked like nothing less than a walking corpse. Its outstretched hands were even more alarming. All 10 fingernails were over a foot long, purple-black in color, and thick with fiendish chi. They were no magical treasure perhaps, but one glance was enough to show they were no easy thing to handle. A corpse white. It's actually one of these abominations. Han Li let out a low bark. The sword that had stabbed downward reversed instantly and came up before his chest in a blocking posture. A sharp metallic ring exploded out. A dazzling shower of sparks flew from the sword edge. Han Li felt a mountain-crushing force slam into him, and his whole body was sent flying backward with the sword held crosswise before him. A corpse white was a thing born from the fusion of an undead soul, and a corpse, trapped in a place rich in fiendish energy for tens of thousands of years before it could possibly take shape. Such things could shift between intangible and solid states, and they delighted in devouring the flesh and souls of living creatures whole. Because they were already dead, they could not truly be counted among the living. Yet because they stood outside the cycle of reincarnation, they were not properly ghosts either. They were beings that belonged neither within the 3 realms nor among the 5 phases. And the one before him was clearly a corpse white whose strength had already reached the Tai level. Still, Han Li saw that its eyes were a blank, snowy white, as if its pupils had not yet opened. It remained in a state of dim ignorance, and that eased his mind somewhat. It was said that once a corpse white devoured enough living flesh and absorbed enough souls, it could awaken its spirit and reclaim intelligence. Its savage nature, however, would not change, and its battle power would far surpass that of cultivators of the same rank. This one had most likely remained trapped here all this time, never given the chance to come into contact with living beings, and thus had failed to develop spiritual awareness. Precisely because of that, Han Li did not immediately turn and flee. In truth, only someone as skilled and daring as he was would remain. Had it been another cultivator of the same rank, whether they could even have withstood that sneak attack just now would have been uncertain. As he thought this, the corpse white suddenly twisted its body. Its figure became erratic and blurred, and with a flash it vanished on the spot. Han Li's eyes twitched. He stamped hard with both feet and retreated explosively. At almost the very same instant, the corpse white appeared where he had just been standing. Both of its hands plunged through a stone pillar, and with one wrench it shattered the pillar into powder. Watching the blue crystal dust rise into the air, Han Li silently uttered a phrase. A golden sphere of light expanded in front of him at once, unfolding into a curtain of gold that enveloped the entire second floor of the hall. The moment the time spirit domain spread open, even the drifting blue crystal dust slowed and softened. Han Li's gaze turned, and he saw the Tai corpse white leaving streak after streak of afterimages through the air as it darted toward him. Even under the suppression of the spirit domain, its speed remained astonishing. Han Li spun, and the sword chi on his green bamboo cloud swarm sword surged violently as he thrust toward a point in space. A sharp metallic clash rang out again. The tip of his sword knocked aside the corpse white's 2 ghostly claws and drove straight into its chest. Yet the monster's body was tougher than Han Li had imagined. Sword chi exploded madly from the blade tip, but all it managed to do was shred its clothing into countless rags, and leave many white marks across its chest. It could not pierce the knotted purple-blue skin beneath. At that very moment the corpse white's hands, which had just been forced aside, snapped back again. The purple-black nails on them doubled in length, becoming like 10 short swords steeped in venom as they stabbed down toward both sides of Han Li's neck. Han Li slapped a hand against the sword hilt and shouted softly. The green bamboo cloud swarm sword began spinning at once like a steel drill, boring savagely into the corpse white's chest. At the same time, crackling sounds burst from the blade as strands of golden lightning surged out, condensing into a thick bolt of thunder that struck the corpse white directly. Raff! The corpse white let out a beast-like roar. Its body stiffened instantly and was hurled backward, falling flat. Its chest turned black and charred, while waves of vile-smelling black smoke rose from it. As expected, the evil bane divine lightning, which specifically countered all een and ghostly creatures, had worked with a single blow. Han Li blurred and appeared before the corpse white in an instant. Before it could rise, golden arcs of lightning coiled around his sword once more as he slashed down toward its head. A strange violet glow suddenly lit up in the corpse white's snowy white eyes. Its body instantly turned insubstantial, becoming smoke-like just as the green bamboo cloud swarm sword was about to hit, and dispersed directly into nothingness. Han Li's heart tightened. He immediately flashed backward. As expected, after dispersing into a ghost-like blur, the corpse white recondensed behind him, becoming solid once more. Both hands, like 10 poison blades, stabbed toward the center of Han Li's back. Fortunately, under the influence of the spirit domain, it was nowhere near as fast as before. Han Li dodged it easily and swept his sword backhanded in response. As the blade swept through the air, the golden lightning around it split into dozens of strands that wove together into a net of electricity, descending over the corpse white and sealing off every possible avenue of retreat. With a metallic crash, the sword struck the corpse white square in the forehead. Golden lightning immediately engulfed its entire body. Crackle, crackle, crackle. Countless arcs of golden electricity burst outward as wave after wave of black smoke rose into the air. The corpse white screamed without end. Its forehead had been blackened and mangled by both sword chi and evil bane divine lightning. Yet its aura showed not the slightest sign of weakening. It had clearly not suffered a fatal injury. Han Li raised his sword, intending to summon several more green bamboo cloudswarm swords, but the corpse white's form abruptly turned ethereal again, sinking into the icy crystal floor like a shadow cast by a blade. On the ice-covered ground, streams of dense black fiendish chi flowed like water from every direction, seeping into the floor and pouring directly into the corpse white's body. Han Li watched as the creature's form wavered between solid and insubstantial. The scorched wounds that the evil bane divine lightning had left on its body began restoring themselves little by little. It can even do that. Han Li's brows drew tight. He stepped forward, and his figure vanished in a flash. In the next instant he appeared above the corpse white. Golden lightning flashed along the sword in his hand as he cleaved downward with all his might. A thunderous explosion shook the hall. The icy crystal floor shattered apart. The corpse white slid out of it like a fish, then turned from insubstantial to solid once more and lunged straight at Han Li. Han Li turned his sword sideways and blocked the attack. The creature paid no heed to the power of the evil bane divine lightning at all. Both hands clamped directly onto the green bamboo cloudswarm sword. Its hideous ghost face thrust forward, mouth yawning wide as it let out a fierce shriek at Han Li. Han Li instantly sensed danger. He held his breath and sealed off his 5 senses, but he was still one step too slow. A stream of deep violet corpse fiend chi shot out like an arrow. It struck his face with a heavy thud and burst into a cloud of purple mist that spread across his entire face. Han Li felt his face go numb. Then a sharp burning taste flooded into his nose. His throat began to itch and dry, and his eyes stung so badly that his vision blurred at once. Suppressing the discomfort, he roared violently. The evil bane divine lightning on the green bamboo cloudswarm sword exploded in an instant, blasting the Tai corpse white away with a thunderous detonation. Immediately afterward, Han Li retreated in rapid succession, his figure constantly shifting and flickering throughout the hall. Though driven back by that strike, the corpse white quickly pounced again, relentlessly chasing Han Li as though determined to tear him to pieces. At this moment Han Li's 5 senses were sealed. He could only rely on the keen perception of his spiritual sense within the spirit domain to dodge continuously. Forced backward step by the corpse white, one man and one corpse clashed repeatedly throughout the hall, explosions ringing out without pause. Violet light flashed constantly in the eyes of the Tai corpse white. Even under the suppression of the spirit domain, its speed was somehow growing faster and faster. The frequency of its collisions with Han Li also increased, and several tears had already appeared in Han Li's robe where the creature's claws had raked across it. Purple mist covered Han Li's face. Within his body, immortal spiritual power was circulating frantically, surging toward his throat, mouth and nose, compressing the corpse fiend chi and forcing it outward. Just then the Tai corpse white's form suddenly dispersed and split into 5 separate figures. Han Li frowned. To his spiritual sense, all 5 gave off exactly the same aura. And with his eyes invaded by corpse fiend chi, he could not use the 9 nether demon pupil. He was completely unable to determine which of the 5 was real and which were false. The 5 corpse whites circled outward, then all rushed toward Han Li at the center simultaneously. Their 10 hands, tipped with purple-black claws glimmering with dark light, stabbed toward his glabella, the back of his head, his throat, his chest, his dantian and every other vital point. No matter which direction Han Li tried to flee, one of the corpse whites would inevitably block him, only for the others to pursue from all sides. Just as he reached the point where there was nowhere left to dodge and nowhere left to retreat, A dazzling golden light suddenly flared behind him, releasing 10,000 blinding rays. A hollow golden wheel, radiant with light, appeared behind him, spinning in place. Bathed in those golden rays, the 5 corpse whites instantly froze in midair when they were still within a few yards of Han Li. At the same time, Han Li suddenly opened his mouth and spat out a ball of purple mist condensed from corpse fiend chi. It shot to the ground and burst apart. The purple haze covering his face also disappeared at once. Violet light blazed in his eyes as he looked toward the 5 corpse whites around him. With that single glance, Han Li noticed that the one whose claws were aimed at his forehead was different from the rest. The corpse fiend aura within it was several times denser than in the others. Han Li frowned faintly. He turned the green bamboo cloudswarm sword in his hand so that its tip pointed directly at the corpse white's dantian. Evil bane divine lightning crackled along the blade, wrapping the entire sword in golden arcs. He murmured a phrase and slapped the blade with one hand. The golden lightning strands immediately surged toward the sword tip, condensing there into a golden thunderball that looked like molten gold poured into shape. It shot straight toward the corpse white's dantian. With a deafening boom, a golden pillar of lightning as thick as a water vat sprang into existence and swallowed the corpse white whole. The entire blue hall trembled violently. The other corpse whites floating nearby began to fade one after another, disappearing in succession and dissolving into streams of purple smoke. Only the corpse white that Han Li had struck head-on with the lightning invocation technique remained, still suspended in midair, imprisoned by the mantra treasure wheel.